بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وبعد. We're in the fifth night of Shahr Dhul Hijjah, the fifth night of the month of Dhul Hijjah. And I want to give some brief reminders, inshallah, that are related to Hajj. Some brief reminders that are related to the Hajj. As everyone knows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ وَأَنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدِيِ. And Allah commands you in Surah Al-Baqarah, and I command you to perform the Hajj and the Umrah for Allah. Here for Allah means for the reward of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah, in order to gain the paradise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you travel for the Hajj and or the Umrah, then you must take with you an animal. You must slaughter that animal. And Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, He also mentioned in the same surah, فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعُ بِالْعُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدِيِ. And whosoever combines his Hajj along with the Umrah at the same time, meaning in these days of Dhul Hijjah, then let him take for him an animal in order to sacrifice. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَالصِّيَامُ ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ فِي الْحَجِّ. Whoever does not find the means or an animal to do that, then let him fast 3 days while he is on the Hajj. وَسَبْعَةٌ إِذَا رَجَعْتُمْ. And 7 when he returns back to his family. And then Allah said, تِلْكَ أَشْرَةٌ كَامِلَةٌ. This makes 10 days of fasting in total for the one who does not slaughter when he makes the Hajj. So here, the highlight is the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to make the Hajj and the Umrah for Allah, and to make for whosoever makes that Hajj, let him make a Umrah along with it. There's a famous hadith of the great companion Imran ibn Husayn, who is famous for the hadith in Sahih Muslim, and also the hadith which it is also collected by Imam al-Nasa'i, where the Prophet ﷺ explained to this companion Salatul Marid, the prayer for the one who is sick. So he asked the Prophet, how does the one who's sick pray, make the salah? And the Prophet said, Sallu qa'iman fi illam tastati qa'idan fi illam tastati fa'ala janbih. Firstly, command him to pray standing. And if you don't have the ability here, the scholars mention the ability physically or circumstantial, as the Prophet has also mentioned for the one praying on the boat, and he is afraid that he may be thrown off the boat, off the ship, while standing praying, then for that one he is allowed, rather he has the rukhs, the exception, the permission to pray sitting. So we say for the one who doesn't have the ability physically or circumstantially, as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا. And if you're in a state of fear, then pray on your feet, walking, moving along, or riding on an animal. And this is after Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala at the top of the page said, حَافِظُوا عَلَى الصَّلَوَاتِ وَالصَّلَاةِ الْوُسْطَى وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Preserve and protect the prayer and all of that which is surrounding it, and the most middle prayer, and stand for Allah in devotion. So this companion, Imran ibn Husayn radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, a person from the Tabi'een came to him And he asked him about the one who makes Hajj without making Umrah along with it in these 10 days of Dhul Hijjah that we're in. So thus, Imran ibn Hussein, he said, to make the Hajj and Umrah attached to it is that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down in his book, meaning the verse that we cited, and whosoever goes to make a Hajj and he goes from Umrah, making the Hajj thereafter, then let him take his animal for slaughter. He said this was revealed by Allah in the Quran. He said, and we don't know the Prophet ﷺ to prohibit or to change that all the way to his death. It remained the same. So he was telling that Tabi', they came to him and asked him that the correct way, the correct position is that you make intention to go for Hajj, while you also make a double intention that you will make Umrah, as the scholars say, either before the Hajj or after the Hajj, rather than just going for Hajj alone by itself. And then Imam al-Bukhari, he mentioned concerning this, he said that Imran ibn Hussein, he said that if you find a person, if you find an individual with an opinion other than this, فَلَا تَلْتَفِتْ إِلَى رَأْيِ أَيِّ أَحَدٍ, that you should not lend the ear to listen to anyone who has an opinion other than this. And Imam al-Bukhari, he said that Imran ibn Hussein was talking about Umar ibn al-Khattabi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, as Umar had the position that you make Hajj without Umrah. So firstly, the benefit that we find from this is that the companions, they were upon, no matter who it is, if he makes something of a verdict or a view in opposition to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger, that no one is binded or compelled to take that opinion. Rather, he should not listen to him over the book and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the ulama, they mention that the reason Umar told the people to make Hajj ifradan, to make Hajj by itself, is not because he himself didn't know about the verdict, as the ayat is clear. And it is not because he himself wanted to oppose the Sharia, the legislation of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. It is not that he wanted to be different from the Messenger. As we have in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that Imran ibn Hussein, the same narrator of the hadith, he said that the Prophet ﷺ left to make the Hajj qarran al-Umrah bil-Hajj, that he united the intention to make both. He said, and when he did that, some of us followed him along in that. And you have the statement of Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, which is the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, who said that the Prophet ordered us, and the same thing that Imran ibn Hussein said, he also ordered us to make the Hajj with Umrah in his farewell Hajj. So we understand that the Prophet in statement and action, in accordance with the verse of Allah, ordered the believers to make the Hajj along with the Umrah in the month of Dhul Hijjah. As for the statement of Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha, that said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he left making the Hajj without Umrah, then the scholars explain what's meant by this Hajj, ifrat, means that he went for Hajj while you still find him sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing the Umrah. Some of the tawaf, some of the, as they call it, tawaf al-qaddim, the tawaf that you make when you first come into Mecca, which is part of a person when he makes umrah. This is his tawaf. The Prophet made some of that tawaf, and he didn't make all 7. Then after that, he ﷺ prayed 2 rak'ah behind the maqam Ibrahim, and then he made the sa'i from the 2 mountains, Safa wal Marwa, and this is when he commanded believers to make the Hajj along with the Umrah attached to it. So therefore, the meaning of the statement of Aisha is not conflicting with the statement of Imran ibn Hussein nor the statement of Ibn Umar, but rather it means that he set out to make the Hajj, and that Hajj was coupled with actions of Umrah, or he set out to make Umrah, and the Hajj connected to that Umrah. Also, the ulama, they mention, as we go back to the statement of Umar ibn al-Khattab with telling the people to make the Hajj without Umrah, the ulama, they mention, such as Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Ajlan of Mecca, in his explanation of this, with his explanation of Umdat al-Ahkam, he mentioned that Umar didn't do this to be against the legislation, but rather this was the issue of ijtihad. Ijtihad means something happens and you try to fix it, or you see a problem, so you try to make a resolution. And that Umar was afraid that if the people started to come for Hajj and Umrah in the time of Hajj, the Hajj season that we're in now, the people will become laxed or satisfied with that, to the point that they would not visit the house of Allah at any other time. Thus, he wanted to make the house of Allah active outside of the Hajj as well. So thus he told the people, make Hajj alone. And then those that wanted to make Umrah, as it is legislated to make that as well, they will come back at a different time. And also another position, a wajh, perspective, that people said that also Umar didn't want to make it difficult upon the people. He did not want to make it difficult upon the people, as the Hajj is an obligation on the Umrah, yani is recommended. So thus, if a person had to come with his animal and they make the Hajj and the Umrah together, that there will be something to discourage the person doing all of that at one time. So thus, he wants to break up the 2 issues, allowing the person to make Hajj in the season of Hajj. Then he could come back and make Umrah, as it will be easier for a person that traveled far by foot or other than that to make it the Hajj, rather than the Hajj and the Umrah together, in his opinion. And the Shaykh, he also mentions another example, the issue of marrying the people of the book, that although Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala allowed for the muhsinat غير مسافحين من أهل الكتاب, from the chaste women, Umar took the position that whoever married from the people of the book, they should be beat during his time. They should be struck during his time. And many of the scholars say that was because the Muslims were plentiful. And why would a person marry a Jew or Christian? As the people of knowledge have mentioned, what would it be like for the mother who's Jewish raising that child, or the mother of the child who's Christian? Are they going to teach them and rear them upon the akhlaq al-hamida or al-adab al-islamiyya, praiseworthy and lofty etiquettes and manners from Islam, or they're going to raise them upon Din Yahudiya or Din Nasraniya, the way of the Jews and the Christians. So for this reason, Umar disliked it, and it wasn't that he was making something a prohibition, but a discouragement, except that it was necessary, or that there was no other choice to marry the people of the book. Then in that case, he allowed it. But other than that which is last resort, or there's no Muslims around to marry, then Umar would highly disdain the marrying of the people of the book, although Allah Ta'ala made it permissible. So this you find from the statements of the ulama about Umar and some of his positions, and that they did not really mean that he was making something haram or something mamnu', prohibition, but that he was trying to solve a situation in both cases, and this is what is called ijtihad. A person is making an effort to solve something that is potentially problematic, or something that arises that will need a solution without a clear text, in fact, for that. Now, without a clear text for that situation, that solution, in fact. So this was the issue of Imran ibn Hussein, and he was mentioning that Prophet did not change it before he died. Neither Allah sent another verse to change the fact that Hajj and Umrah should be together. So therefore, this was the statement of Imran ibn Hussein and the likes of Ibn Umar and others, that the Hajj should be coupled with the Umrah. And you have the famous narration, the Sahih Muslim, on Abdullah ibn Mas'udi, Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, where the people came to him during that same time, and they said, how should we make it the Hajj? Should it be made with Umrah or without? And he said that Prophet mentioned that it should be made with Umrah. And so they said, Abu Bakr and Umar, they said it should be made solidarily without Umrah. And then he said, I say to you, أقول لكم قال رسول الله فتقولوا قال أبو بكر والعمر. He said, I tell you that the messenger said, and then you mentioned to me Abu Bakr and Umar said, and he became very angry, and he said, Yushik, ماذا يوشك أن تنزلوا أن تنزلوا يوشك أن تنزلوا يوشك أن تنزلوا عليكم حجارة من السماء. He said, I fear that at this time stones are going to fall down upon your heads from the heavens. They said, I tell you, the messenger said, and you have the nerve to tell me on top, over what he says, that Abu Bakr and Umar says, and he made this supplication. So this shows that the companions, Barakallahu fikum, they were from the people of Nas, those from the people of the book and the Sunnah. And if someone brought something outside of that, they will be the first ones to enjoin the good, prohibit the evil, and to reject that. And for the one who did that out of trying to solve an affair because he was in charge, then for him it's two rewards if he's right. It does not oppose the book and the Sunnah. And if he opposes the book and the Sunnah unintentionally, then he gets one reward for his intention to solve an issue based upon Islamic jurisprudence. Also, you have from the issues of the Hajj, Barakallahu fikum, and Qawla al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-Hajj Arafah. Naam, al-Hajj Arafah. That Hajj is Arafah. And many of the scholars, they say this is one of the proofs that the day of Arafah is the best day of the year. ومنهم يقولون أن يوم الذبح يوم الأضحية هو يعني أفضل اليوم. It is, and some scholars say that the actual day of the sacrifice, which is the next day, the day of slaughter after Arafah, is the best day. And if you look at both of them, then both of them are correct, as Arafah is from amongst the best days, because the Prophet ﷺ said that Hajj is Arafah, and many of the scholars they explain this means that the Arafah, the day of Arafah, in which you stand in the place called Arafah, and you make dua all day from Dhuhr to Maghrib, combined in Dhuhr with Asr, asking Allah, raising your hands, being close to Allah Ta'ala in a great state, asking for your loved ones, for your friends, and for those who are close to you, and asking Allah Ta'ala for the purification of the soul in this life and the hereafter and a good ending, and all of the things that you can think of, then this is only because it's the greatest day of the year. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Prophet mentioned that the Hajj is Arafah, meaning without that day, without a person standing in that place on that day, then he has no Hajj. As many of the scholars they mentioned, this means Huwa Ruqan al-Hajj. Arafah is a pillar of the Hajj. Whoever does not go, then he has no Hajj. And then you have وَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ فِيكُمْ, the issue of slaughtering the day of Dhibh. And if you combine the both of them, then the Arafah, as the scholars say, is from the most greatest days in the year, while the slaughtering the day after Eid is from amongst the greatest days too, as the people are slaughtering for the sake of Allah, and they are on that day making the tawaf that day, which Allah Ta'ala Messenger used to make, the tawaf al-ifadah, the tawaf that's part of the Hajj. And it's similar to the statement about the Arsh and the Qalam. Yani from the first things that were created, they're both from the first things, although one has some superiority over the other, then they're both in the same category of greatness. They're from the first things. It's those things that come first are always the greatest. As the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, the salatu ala waqtiha, the salat upon its time. The scholars mention ala here in the Arabic language means ista'la'u, that which is superior. And so they said it takes the meaning of salatu fi awwali waqtiha, the prayer in its earliest, the first time period, or the earliest time period. So thus this is something that shows superiority. As for the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, أخرجه إمام الترمذي وقد حسنه إمام الألباني وذكر أن هذا حديث حسن لغيره. And this hadith that is collected by the great Imam al-Tirmidhi, Imam al-Tirmidhi, where Imam al-Albani says that the origin of this hadith needs an upgrade, meaning that the hadith itself has something that needs to be credited. It is not credible by itself. So when you hear Hasan, this means that it's good by itself. But when you hear Hasan li ghayri, if it says li ghayri, this means something else had to substantiate this hadith, another wording or another chain. So here Imam al-Albani deems the hadith to be Hasan li ghayri, meaning that the origin of this hadith has some weakness or some discredibility to it, but it is okayed by another hadith. That is the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Khayru du'a du'a Arafah. Khayru du'a du'a Arafah. That the best du'a is the du'a that you make on Arafah. Tayyib. So here, dua, should be understood. Any invocation, any calling on, or any requesting, all of this is inclusive of the meaning of dua. And don't think of the issue of dua as just a person's in need. So this is, oh Allah, help me. Or a person wants forgiveness. They say, oh Allah, forgive me. Or a person is asking Allah for some loved one, so they say, oh Allah, bless so and so. This is not the only meaning of dua. Rather, dua is anytime you say Allah, you call His name, this is considered dua. Meaning that you yourself, you called Allah's name. Just as if you were to call a person by the name, you say Hakim. You're not just calling him, but you're actually calling that person. You're actually saying the name at the same time. You are the one who who you're calling him. Although you're saying his name, it's a type of calling, an announcement. So here the word dua, it includes when you make any mention of Allah's name. And thus Prophet ﷺ in this hadith, it said khayru dua arafa, meaning when you say la ilaha illallah, there is Allah's name is mentioned, wahdahu la sharika lah, Allah, He is alone, and then you say for Him, lahul mulku, for Him is the ownership of everything, wa lahul hamdu, for Him is all of the praise, big and small, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, and He has everything in His hands and His power. So this is why it's called dua, because when you mention Allah's name simply, or you ask Him for something more overly, then all of this is considered dua. So as for that hadith, khayru dua arafa, then this hadith, we said again, is in the collection of Jami' at-Tirmidhi, and the Jami' of Imam at-Tirmidhi, which is from the Imams of the 6 books of hadith. And Imam al-Albani said that this hadith is hasan li ghayri, meaning it's been okay by another hadith other than the origin of this hadith that is worded khayru dua. And then you have the hadith that is in the Muwatta of Imam Malik and Sheikh bin Baz and others have mentioned that the stronger, where the Prophet said, Afdalu da'a'u arafa. The most virtuous and the most blessed of the dua is the dua of Arafah. So the second wording is asah wa aqwa wa atam. It has more right to be used, it is more suitable, and it is stronger in the reliability as it comes from the Muwatta of Imam Malik, which the Muwatta of Imam Malik, who understand, only has a few people to begin with in the chain. And that's because Imam Malik was close to the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een, or to the Sahaba, and then the Sahaba narrate directly on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You also have the issue of the scholars, they have been asked about the person that enters Mecca as a local. He lives in Mecca, so he's there as a person who's a resident of that city. And that person, he decides at some point, hey, I want to make Umrah. Does he just start making the tawaf, get dressed and make tawaf like all of the other people who came from outside of Mecca? Or should he go back outside of Mecca and then enter Mecca as a person coming into Mecca? They said the answer is that he should go out. He should go out of Mecca and enter Mecca in order to become in a state of ihram for Umrah, and that is no problem if he wants to do that in order to make the Umrah. They say as for a person that comes in to make the Umrah, and then he decides, okay, I'm going to go back out so I can come back in and make Umrah again, and then I'm going to go back out so that I can go out and come back in and make Umrah again, then they said, no, this is not correct. But rather you come in with the intention to make Umrah, and you make that Umrah, and that is sufficient, as we don't know the Prophet to go in and out, making multiple Umrahs at one particular time. As for the person that is a local, he is from the people of Mecca, then he has to go outside of the city and to come in order to be in a state of ihram. Now, so the scholars, they will ask, Barakallahu fikum, about the one who comes in the city of Mecca and he does not make a tawaf al-qudum, Tawaf al-Qudum means you greet Mecca with tawaf, like people greet the masjid with 2 rak'ah and any other masjid, where here you come and the first thing you do is you make tawaf. If a person does not make this tawaf, is his umrah correct or not? Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Jalan, he mentioned that it is recommended to make the Tawaf al-Qudum, to make the Tawaf of entering Mecca as a greeting. But it is not wajib, it's not compulsory. And if a person left it and he did all of the other things of Umrah, then his Umrah will be accepted. Also, you have the issue of Barakallahu Fikum, the issue of the one who has to fast because he did not slaughter the animal on the Hajj. The ulama from amongst them are those that say that he should not fast Barakallahu Fikum on the 3 days of Tashriq. The 3 days of Tashriq is when the meat has been skinned and prepared for hanging so that they can dry out. As you know, in the days of old, there were no refrigerators and things of icebox and so forth. So the way to preserve the meat and to prepare for eating was to clean it and salt it and dry it in the sun. So this is why it's called Tashriq. And this is the following days after Eid, which is considered the 11th, 12th, and 13th of Dhul Hijjah, which Rasulullah mentioned they are days of eating and drinking. And that they are days of eating and drinking, they are extended days of Eid. And we should not confuse the customs of the people from their country where they say that every Eid is 3 days. So the one after Ramadan, they said is 3 days. And the one that's coming up that we're in now, Dhul Hijjah, is 3 days. No. The one for Eid al-Fitrah after fasting is 1 day. Religiously. According to texts. 1 day. Awwal Shawwal wal Eid al-Fitrah faqat. That the first day of Shawwal, the first day after fasting the month of Ramadan, 29 30 days, this is the only day officially of Eid. As for the Eid al-Adha, then you have the day of slaughter and then 3 days after of eating and drinking, which it makes 4 days. But the countries, they give the people 3 governmental days for each Eid. So this is different. This is something that the government does, but it's not considered Eid al-Shara'i, a legislative Eid for Eid al-Fitrah. Neither is it considered the Eid for the Hajj month, because for the Hajj month you have the day of slaughter on the 10th, and then you have 11, 12, and 13, which makes 4 days in total. So if they give you 3 days, you're still missing 1. And for the Fitrah, breaking the fast, that's the only day of Eid, Shara'an, and religiously. And we don't know any other people from the 3 generations to do other than the first day of Shawwal. So when the people say Eid is 3 days in my country, they mean the government shuts down and gives people 3 days off of work for each Eid. But realistically, for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the sunnah of the Messenger sallam, there's 1 day only for the Eid of Ramadan. And there are 4 days in total for this Eid that we're about to experience. And that is the day of slaughter and then 3 days of eating and drinking. So the one that does not slaughter on Hajj, Allah said for him to fast 3 days on Hajj. Then the scholars disagree, or I should say, they have Barakallahu Fikum ikhtilaf. There is a discussion. Some say that you should not do it on those 3 days because it's Eid, and the Prophet prohibited that you fast on Eid. You cannot fast on the day that is considered Eid, whether it be Ramadan or the Hajj month. Whether it be the weekly Eid, Jumu'ah, you cannot fast on the day of Eid. You cannot fast for the 3 days of Tashriq because it is considered the day of Eid. Others say it's an exception because Allah says, then fast those 3 days on Hajj and 7 you return home. Others say that you're allowed to fast on the Hajj to fulfill this part of the verse, but you must do it, they said, before Arafat. As you cannot fast on Arafat as a person making Hajj. Prophet fasted on the day of Arafah when he was not making Hajj. As for the one on Arafah, then the Prophet prohibited that you fast, because it will be a great difficulty to stand making dua all day from Dhuhr to Maghrib, and you're fasting like this on the day of Arafah, and you already begun some of the Hajj rituals and walking in and so forth like this. So many of them said, as a resolution for this, the one who has to fast 3 days because he did not have an animal or find the means to slaughter for the Hajj as a Haji, as a person on the pilgrimage, then he is allowed to fast on the 6th day of the Dhul Hijjah and the 7th and the 8th, which will knock out his 3 days, and thus the 9th, which is Arafah, he avoids. As if he tried to do it on the 7th and 8th, he will still need one more day, which Arafah he cannot fast, and he cannot fast on the day of slaughter, and he cannot fast on the 3 days of eating and drinking, and after that, it's time to go home. So this is the difference between the scholars, whether or not a person can fast on the days of Tashriq. The days of eating and drinking, which are the 11th, 12th, and 13th, is an exception to fulfill the part of the verse that Allah mentioned. And whoever does not find the means or animal to slaughter for the Hajj, and let him fast 3 days on the Hajj and 7 when he returns. And lastly, Barakallahu Fikum, the issue of the talbiyah, that is to say, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, La Sharika Laka Labbaik, Inna Alhamda wal Ni'mata Laka wal Mulk, La Sharika La, Labbaik Hajja, Labbaik Hajja, Labbaik Hajj Hajjan. These statements, we talk about them in light of niyyah. As it has been narrated that Imam al-Shafi'i, in his famous book of fiqh that he wrote, teaching and explaining how to understand and apply different aspects of the religions, called Al-Um. And this book has, I think, at least 3,000 pages or more. SubhanAllah, outstanding work. Some of the people attribute to Imam al-Shafi'i in this great work that he mentioned that the statement حججت حجا أو يعني حج حجا, I am making Hajj as a person of pilgrimage, this is a niyyah. But Shaykhuna Muqbil, we asked him this, and this was asked to him many times in his life, and he and the other mashaykh and students that were to a high level, they combed through the of Imam al-Shafi'i, the book of fiqh called Al and they did not find this statement. Rather, Shaykh Muqbil said in the Arabic language, this statement to say Hujju Hajjan, it is called Mada, it is called it is called it is the technical term in the Arabic language, but you don't call it a niyyah, you call it af'al mutlaq or fi'l mutlaq or something like this, if I recall correctly. And this just shows that a person is expressing something, but it's not considered a niyyah. It is a statement of glorification, but it's not niyyah. As all of them say, the place for niyyah is in the heart of a person. So you cannot say that this is a proof that you voice. For example, oh Allah, I'm about to pray 4 rakat of Salat al-Isha on this 5th or 4th night of Dhul Hijjah, or 5th night of Dhul Hijjah, and like this. No, but rather this talbiyah, or what you say Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, or when you say La ilaha illallah, or you say Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, I'm here for you, to proclaim out loud like this. This is a proclamation and not a niyyah, because the action prior to making that statement is the whole preparation for the Hajj. No one mentioned this before they left the house, so the niyyah is the decision, the azam, the goal that you're trying to achieve. So thus, no one should understand this is okay to say, okay, so now for every intention we voice it. Some have said this is niyyah, but they said this is an exception. This is okay to voice this type of niyyah because Prophet Sallam did it. So anything that the Prophet Sallam did, then it is not innovation, and this is to be followed. So some have mentioned, as Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Ajlan mentioned, that some scholars have mentioned that this is a type of niyyah, but this does not negate that the place for niyyah is in the heart, and that this is just an exception because the Prophet did it. But most of the people of knowledge, they don't call this niyyah, bima a'lam, from what I know. Rather, that which is maf'ul mutlaq. Maf'ul mutlaq, something that you do. And mutlaq here just means a technical term to show that something is just an absolute action or statement, and not that it's particular, as niyyah is particular, as Prophet Sallam said, that it is something for each individual, for something that he intends, and thus the Prophet Sallam did it as a act of, as we said, dua or dhikr, something to show ta'zeem, magnification to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, but not as a niyyah ala lisani, to put a intention upon the tongue, because the place for the intention is the heart, as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said, and I've not commanded them except they worship Allah, worship me, being sincere in the religion. And here the point is mukhlis fi qalbih, in his heart he is pure. وكما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم من مات وهو ماذا ومن مات وهو من شهد لا إله إلا الله ومن شهد لا إله إلا الله أو ماذا من شهد من وراء هذا حائط مستلقيا في القلب فبشره بالجنة كما قال. From the hadith of Uthman ibn Affan, the Prophet said, whoever makes and lives behind this declaration, meaning the shahadatain, and he is certain of that in his heart. هنا اليقين وهو بمعنى بارك الله فيكم النية الصادق والماذا the pure intention with a strong resolve in someone's heart. Then this is the point they want to make about the points and the benefits around Hajj. ونسأل تبارك وتعالى خيرا في هذه أشهر كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما من أيام العمل الصالح فيها أحب إلى الله من هذه الأشهر. في حديث عبد الله بن عباس الرجل إمام الترمذي ونبي عاصم وغيره, from the hadith of Ibn Abbas, where he said, there is no deeds of righteousness done that Allah loves more than those that you do in these 10 days. To make us from those who do the good deeds in these 10 days, and that we stay away from the bad deeds, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the good deeds in these 10 days. Thus the opposite is understood, that He dislikes and hates the bad deeds in these days. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا والحمد لله رب العالمين.